The first time Olivia Blackburn stumbled in the dusty main street of Copper Creek, Arizona Territory, 1885, the whispers started like a brush fire. She had arrived on the eastbound train with nothing but a small trunk and the distinctive curve of her spine that made her stand out in a town where differences were seldom tolerated. "Look at that hunchback," someone muttered as she passed, the words cutting through the air like a knife. Olivia kept her gaze forward, her green eyes focused on the distant mountains as she made her way to her aunt's millinery shop. At 22, she had grown accustomed to the stares and whispers that followed her like shadows. Born with a severe scoliosis that curved her upper back and right shoulder, she had learned to carry herself with quiet dignity despite the cruel remarks that often trailed behind her. The bell above the door of Barrett's fine millinery tinkled as she entered, the scent of fabric and feathers enveloping her like an old friend. "Aunt Martha," she called, setting down her trunk. A plump woman with graying auburn hair emerged from behind a curtain, her face lighting up at the sight of her niece. "Olivia, thank heavens you've arrived safely." Martha Barrett rushed forward, embracing her niece carefully. The journey from Philadelphia must have been exhausting. "It was long," Olivia admitted, "but necessary." After her parents' deaths from influenza the previous winter, Olivia had few options. When her aunt had written offering her a place in her shop and home, Olivia had accepted with gratitude, despite her trepidation about leaving the only city she had ever known. "Come, let me show you to your room. You can rest before dinner." As they moved through the shop toward the back stairs, Martha's expression grew serious. "Olivia, I must warn you, Copper Creek isn't Philadelphia. The people here can be set in their ways." "I'm well acquainted with how people react to me, Aunt Martha," Olivia replied softly. "I've had 22 years to learn that lesson." "You'll find your place here," Martha assured her, squeezing her hand. "Just give it time." Time, however, did little to soften the town's reception. As weeks passed, Olivia proved herself invaluable in the shop, her nimble fingers and eye for design transforming ordinary hats into works of art. But outside those walls, Copper Creek remained cold and unwelcoming. The whispers followed her everywhere. "Poor twisted thing. Wonder what she did to deserve that burden. Shame about her back might be pretty otherwise." Olivia learned which streets to avoid and when to run errands to minimize encounters. She kept her head high, her back as straight as it could be, and her heart guarded behind walls built from years of rejection. Until the morning Owen Donovan rode into town. The commotion outside drew Olivia to the shop window. A small crowd had gathered to watch as a tall stranger on a magnificent chestnut stallion made his way down the main street. Even from a distance, there was something compelling about him, the easy way he sat in the saddle, the quiet confidence in his bearing. "That'll be the new foreman for the Circle G," Martha said, appearing beside Olivia. "Grayson hired him from down Texas way, they say. Supposed to be the best horseman and tracker this side of the Mississippi." Olivia watched as the man dismounted with fluid grace outside the general store. His tall frame was lean but powerful, his movements sure and unhurried. When he removed his hat to wipe his brow, she caught a glimpse of sandy brown hair and a sun-weathered face. "Well, don't just stand there gawking," Martha said with a knowing smile. "We need more ribbon for the Henderson order." "Why don't you run across to Wilkins' store?" Olivia hesitated, then nodded. She would have to venture out sooner or later, and now was as good a time as any. Straightening her shawl over her shoulders, a habit meant to camouflage her deformity, she stepped out into the bright Arizona sunshine. She kept her eyes down as she crossed the street, focusing on avoiding the puddles from the previous night's rare summer rain. So intent was she on her path that she failed to notice the man exiting the store until they collided. "Oh," Olivia gasped as she stumbled backward, mortified. Strong hands caught her arms, steadying her. "Whoa there, madam, you all right?" Olivia looked up into the clearest blue eyes she had ever seen. The stranger, the cowboy from the Circle G, held her gently, his expression concerned rather than repulsed. Yes, thank you. I wasn't watching where I was going. She pulled away, instinctively hunching her shoulders to hide her back. No harm done. His voice carried a slight Texas drawl. Owen Donovan, madam, new to these parts? Olivia Blackburn, she replied, surprised at his extended hand. Most men avoided touching her, as if her condition might be catching. After a moment's hesitation, she accepted the handshake. His grip was warm and firm, his calloused palm evidence of a life of hard work. Pleasure to meet you, Miss Blackburn. Before she could respond, a voice called out from across the street. Better watch yourself, Donovan. That one's cursed with the devil's own mark. Olivia stiffened, her cheeks burning with humiliation. It was Tom Wilson, the blacksmith's son, and his words carried clearly in the morning air. She expected the cowboy to release her hand, to step away as others invariably did when confronted with the town's judgment. Instead, his grip tightened slightly. Seems to me, he called back, his voice level but carrying an unmistakable edge, that the only curse I'm seeing is a man with too much mouth and too little manners. Shocked murmurs rippled through the onlookers. No one had ever defended Olivia publicly before. Owen tipped his hat to her, as if nothing unusual had happened. Miss Blackburn, I hope our paths cross again under more pleasant circumstances. With that, he mounted his horse and rode away, leaving Olivia standing in stunned silence amid the whispers of the townsfolk. That evening, as she helped her aunt close the shop, Olivia couldn't stop thinking about the encounter. Why would he do that? She wondered aloud. Stand up for me like that? Martha smiled knowingly as she counted the day's earnings. Not everyone judges by appearances, dear. Some men have the wisdom to look deeper. One act of kindness doesn't mean anything, Olivia protested, though a small part of her wished otherwise. Perhaps not, her aunt conceded, but it's a start. In the days that followed, Olivia found herself watching for the tall cowboy whenever she ventured into town. Their paths crossed occasionally, a nod in the street, a brief exchange at the general store. Each time, Owen treated her with the same easy respect he showed everyone, never once acknowledging her disability or the town's reaction to it. It was a sweltering August afternoon when fate brought them together again in earnest. Olivia had volunteered to deliver a completed hat to Mrs. Grayson at the Circle G, knowing her aunt was too busy with orders for the upcoming harvest festival. The ranch sprawled across several hundred acres outside town, its main house an impressive two-story structure surrounded by barns, bunkhouses, and corrals. As Olivia approached in the hired buggy, she saw a group of men breaking horses in a round pen. At the center was Owen, his shirt soaked with sweat as he worked with a spirited black Mustang. He moved with the animal as if they were dancing some ancient, wordless ritual of trust and respect. The other ranch hands watched intently, calling out encouragement as horse and man circled each other. Olivia sat transfixed until the Mustang finally allowed Owen to place a gentle hand on its heaving flank. Only then did she continue to the main house, where Mrs. Grayson received her with polite surprise. How thoughtful of Martha to send it out personally, the rancher's wife said, examining the elegant bonnet with approval, though she might have spared you the journey in this heat. I volunteered, madam, Olivia explained. The exercise does me good. Mrs. Grayson's eyes flickered briefly to Olivia's back, but she simply nodded. Well, you must have some refreshment before heading back. Rosa has made fresh lemonade. Despite her protests, Olivia found herself seated on the shaded veranda, a cool glass in hand. From this vantage point, she could still see the activity in the corrals, though Owen and the black Mustang had moved to a larger enclosure. He has a way with them, Mrs. Grayson remarked, following Olivia's gaze. The horses, I mean. Mr. Donovan seems to understand what they need before they know themselves. It's remarkable to watch, Olivia admitted. My husband says he's the finest horseman he's ever employed, and Harold Grayson isn't easy to impress. She studied Olivia for a moment. You know, we're having a small gathering here next Saturday evening. Nothing formal, just some neighbors and friends. You and your aunt should come." Olivia nearly choked on her lemonade. "That's very kind, but I insist. Martha Barrett has been making my bonnets for 15 years. It's high time she and her talented niece joined us socially." Before Olivia could formulate another excuse, the screen door opened, and Owen himself stepped onto the veranda. He'd clearly stopped to wash up, his face and hair damp, a fresh shirt clinging to his still wet skin. "Mrs. Grayson, Hernandez says the new—" He stopped short at the sight of Olivia. "Miss Blackburn, didn't expect to see you out here." "Miss Blackburn delivered my new bonnet," Mrs. Grayson explained, "and I've just invited her and Martha to our gathering next Saturday." Something flickered in Owen's blue eyes, surprise, perhaps, or pleasure. "That would be fine indeed. Will you come?" Put on the spot, Olivia found herself nodding. "If Aunt Martha agrees." "Excellent," Mrs. Grayson beamed. "Now, Owen, what was Hernandez saying about the new what?" As Owen discussed ranch business with his employer, Olivia sipped her lemonade and wondered what madness had possessed her to accept such an invitation. Social gatherings had always been exercises in humiliation for her, the pitying glances, the careful distance people maintained, as if her condition might be contagious. When it came time for her to leave, Owen offered to drive her back to town. "Mrs. Grayson asked me to see you safely returned," he explained, helping her into a buggy. "That hired rig doesn't look too reliable." As they set off down the dusty road, Olivia felt acutely aware of his presence beside her. He handled the reins with the same quiet confidence he showed with everything, his posture relaxed yet alert. "You don't have to come to the gathering if it makes you uncomfortable," he said after they'd traveled in silence for some minutes. "Mrs. Grayson means well, but she can be insistent." Olivia glanced at him, surprised by his perception. "Is it that obvious I'm terrified at the prospect?" A small smile curved his lips. "Only to someone who's watching. And you've been watching me, Mr. Donovan, Owen," he corrected gently. "And yes, I reckon I have." The directness of his admission startled her into silence. They traveled another mile before she found her voice again. "Why?" He considered the question seriously. "Because you move through that town with more dignity than most folks who mock you. Because you hold yourself tall despite everything. Because there's a grace in you that has nothing to do with the shape of your back." Tears pricked at Olivia's eyes, and she turned away to hide them. No one had ever spoken to her this way before. "I'm sorry if I spoke out of turn," Owen said softly, misinterpreting her silence. "No," she managed, "it's just unexpected." They were nearing the outskirts of town now. Soon they would be back among the judging eyes and whispered comments. "Will you come?" he asked again. "To the gathering?" Olivia took a deep breath. "Yes, I think I will." The smile he gave her then was worth whatever discomfort the evening might bring. True to her word, Olivia accompanied her aunt to the Grayson Ranch that Saturday. Martha had been delighted by the invitation, though she'd eyed her niece speculatively when Olivia suggested they each make new dresses for the occasion. "This wouldn't have anything to do with a certain blue-eyed cowboy, would it?" she teased. Olivia had denied it, of course, but the care she took with her appearance that evening spoke volumes. She chose fabric in a rich burgundy that complemented her fair skin and dark hair, designing the dress with a high neckline and careful draping that minimized her spinal curvature without attempting to hide it completely. The Grayson home glowed with lamplight as they arrived, the sounds of music and laughter spilling from the open windows. Olivia hesitated at the threshold, her courage faltering. "We don't have to stay long," Martha assured her, sensing her niece's anxiety. But then Owen was there, emerging from a group of men discussing cattle prices to greet them. His eyes widened appreciatively at the sight of Olivia in her burgundy dress. "Miss Blackburn, Mrs. Barrett, you both look lovely this evening." His gaze lingered on Olivia. "May I get you some punch?" With Owen as their escort, the initial awkwardness faded. He introduced them to people Olivia had only seen at a distance in town, presenting her as Miss Blackburn, the artist behind those fine hats at Barrett's Millinery. To her surprise, several of the women expressed genuine interest in her work. As the evening progressed, Owen remained attentive without being obvious, somehow appearing at her side whenever conversations lagged or uncomfortable silences threatened. When music started and couples began to dance, Olivia retreated to a quiet corner, content to watch. Not dancing, Miss Blackburn? Mrs. Grayson appeared beside her, fanning herself after a lively reel. I don't dance, madam, Olivia replied softly. Nonsense, everyone dances. The older woman's eyes twinkled. And I believe Mr. Donovan is looking for a partner for the next set. Before Olivia could protest, Mrs. Grayson had beckoned Owen over. I was just telling Miss Blackburn that you were in need of a partner. Owen's expression registered surprise, then understanding. He bowed slightly to Olivia. Would you do me the honor, Miss Blackburn? I can't, Olivia began, then lowered her voice. My back makes it difficult. Then we'll move slowly, he replied, offering his hand. I'll follow your lead. Reluctantly, she allowed him to guide her to the edge of the dancing area as the musicians began a gentle waltz. Olivia stood stiffly, painfully aware of curious eyes upon them. I haven't danced since I was a child, she confessed, before my condition worsened. Then we'll remember together, Owen said, placing one hand lightly at her waist, careful to avoid the most pronounced curve of her spine. Just feel the music. At first, they barely moved, swaying in place while other couples circled around them. But gradually, as Olivia realized that Owen truly didn't mind accommodating her limitations, she relaxed into the simple steps. There, he murmured approvingly. You're a natural. Hardly, she laughed softly, but thank you for the fiction. No fiction, he insisted, just truth as I see it. As they moved together in their small corner of the dance floor, something shifted between them, a recognition, perhaps, of kindred spirits, despite their outward differences. People are staring, Olivia whispered, catching the curious glances. Let them, Owen replied, his voice holding a quiet certainty. Maybe they'll learn something. The music ended too soon, and Owen escorted her back to her seat with a reluctance that matched her own. For the remainder of the evening, Olivia felt a curious lightness, as if something long dormant had awakened inside her. On the ride back to town, Martha tactfully dozed in the carriage, giving Olivia and Owen privacy to talk. Under the vast canopy of stars, they shared stories of their pasts, Olivia's childhood in Philadelphia, Owen's years drifting through Texas and New Mexico after the war claimed his parents and their small ranch. What brought you to Copper Creek? She asked. Owen was quiet for a moment, his face thoughtful in the moonlight. I was looking for something, I think, a place where I could put down roots again. And have you found it? His gaze met hers. I'm beginning to believe I have. The weeks that followed brought a gradual transformation in Olivia's life. Owen found reasons to visit town regularly, often stopping by the millinery shop. Their friendship blossomed in plain sight of the townspeople, who gradually shifted from overt mockery to puzzled acceptance of the odd pair. Olivia began joining Owen on short rides into the countryside, discovering a freedom in the saddle that she'd never imagined possible. Owen taught her to ride astride rather than side saddle, adapting the equipment to accommodate her spine. Your back might be crooked, he told her as she successfully guided her gentle mare across a shallow creek, but your seat in the saddle is truer than most cowboys I know. Each small victory built her confidence. She began to hold her head higher in town, to meet the gazes of those who had once made her shrink into herself. Not everyone changed their attitudes, there were still cruel whispers and sidelong glances, but they affected her less now. You've brought her to life, Martha remarked to Owen one afternoon as they watched Olivia sketch designs for new hats by the shop window. I've never seen her smile so much. She did that herself, Owen replied. I just reminded her she could. Yet for all their growing closeness, Owen maintained a careful respect for Olivia's boundaries. He never presumed more than friendship, though his feelings were increasingly evident to everyone but Olivia herself. The turning point came in October, as autumn painted the surrounding hills in gold and crimson. A sudden rainstorm trapped Owen and Olivia in a lined shack while returning from delivering hats to a distant ranch. With night falling and the dirt roads turning to mud, they had no choice but to wait out the downpour. "We should be safe here," Owen said, building a small fire in the stone hearth. "The Graysons keep these shacks stocked for the hands when they're working distant pastures." Olivia sat on a rough-hewn bench watching him work. In the close quarters of the one-room shelter, she felt both nervous and strangely at peace. Lightning illuminated the small space in brief electric flashes, followed by rumbles of thunder that shook the walls. "Will anyone worry about us?" she asked, thinking of her aunt. "I told Hernandez where we were headed," Owen assured her. "When we don't return, he'll know we've sought shelter. Your aunt won't fret." As the fire caught and spread warmth through the cabin, they shared the simple provisions from Owen's saddlebags: jerky, hardtack, and coffee he brewed in a small pot. "Not exactly the fancy dinner I promised you in town," he apologized, settling beside her on the bench. "I prefer this," Olivia admitted. "No prying eyes or whispers." The storm intensified, rain drumming on the roof like 1,000 impatient fingers. A particularly violent gust of wind rattled the shutters, making Olivia jump. "Easy," Owen said softly, his hand covering hers. "We're safe here." She looked at their joined hands, then up at his face, illuminated by the dancing firelight. "Why have you been so kind to me, Owen? From that very first day, you've treated me differently than anyone else ever has." He was quiet for a long moment, his thumb tracing gentle circles on her palm. "My mother had a saying. She told me, 'Look with your heart, not just your eyes, and you'll see the truth of a person.'" He shifted slightly to face her more directly. "The first time I saw you in town, holding yourself so tall despite those fools and their cruelty, I saw someone with more strength and grace than any of them would ever know. Your back may curve, Olivia, but your spirit stands straighter than any I've ever encountered." Tears welled in Olivia's eyes. "No one has ever seen me that way before." "Then they weren't really looking," Owen said simply. Something pushed Olivia to be brave, then braver than she'd ever been. "And what else do you see when you look at me?" His blue eyes darkened with emotion. "I see the woman I've fallen in love with." The words hung in the air between them, honest and unadorned. Outside, the storm raged on, but inside the small cabin, time seemed suspended. "Owen," she whispered, "my condition, it won't improve. The doctors say it may worsen with age." "I'll never be perfect," he finished for her. "None of us are, Olivia. My body carries its own scars from horses, from battles, from life." He touched his left leg, which Olivia had noticed sometimes caused him to limp slightly after long days riding. "Caught a Confederate bullet at Gettysburg. Hurts like the devil when it rains." His hand moved to gently cup her cheek. "We all have our burdens to bear. The lucky ones don't have to bear them alone." In that moment, with rain pattering on the roof and firelight flickering over his earnest face, Olivia made her decision. She leaned forward and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was tentative at first, then deepened as Owen's arms encircled her carefully, mindful of her back. When they finally parted, both were breathing unsteadily. "I love you too," she admitted, the words both terrifying and liberating. "But I'm afraid." "Of what?" "Of believing this is possible, of trusting that you won't wake up one day and regret choosing someone like me." Owen's expression grew serious. "Olivia, do you know what I see in our future? I see a home we build together, work that fulfills us both, children if we're blessed, and years of facing whatever comes our way side by side." His voice roughened with emotion. "I see you beside me as we grow old, both of us bent and weathered by time, still holding each other up." "You make it sound so simple," she whispered. "Not simple," he corrected. "Worth fighting for." The storm continued through the night, but they barely noticed. Wrapped in blankets before the fire, they talked of dreams and fears, of pasts left behind and futures yet to be written. When sleep finally claimed them, They remained close, her head on his shoulder, his arm protectively around her waist. They returned to town the next morning to find Martha worried but unsurprised to learn they'd sought shelter together. "The storm was dreadful," was all she said, though her knowing glance between them spoke volumes. Word traveled quickly in Copper Creek. By noon, the entire town knew that Owen Donovan had spent the night alone with Olivia Blackburn. The whispers took on a different tone, now scandal rather than mockery, but judgment nonetheless. Owen confronted it head-on. That very afternoon, he called upon Martha formally to ask permission to court her niece, making his intentions clear to anyone who cared to listen. "I intend to marry her," he declared when Tom Wilson made a crude remark outside the saloon. "Any man who disrespects her disrespects me, and I wouldn't recommend that course of action." His reputation as a fair but formidable man silenced the worst of the gossip. Those who had once mocked Olivia most cruelly now avoided Owen's gaze when he rode into town. Olivia bloomed under his courtship. The careful attention he showed her, never treating her as fragile, yet always mindful of her comfort, gave her confidence she'd never known. She began to hold sewing circles at the millinery shop, teaching younger girls her techniques. Some of the same women who had once avoided her now sought her company and advice. "You've changed this town," Owen remarked as they walked along the creek one Sunday afternoon in early December, 3 months after the night in the lined shack. "Not I," Olivia laughed. "You're the one who stood up to them. No, it was you, showing them day after day what dignity looks like." He stopped walking, turning to face her. "You've changed me too, given me a reason to build something lasting." From his pocket, he withdrew a small velvet pouch. "I've been carrying this since I went to Tucson last month." Inside was a delicate gold ring set with a small but perfect sapphire. "It reminded me of your eyes," he said softly. "Owen," she breathed. He sank to one knee on the creek bank, the winter sun glinting off his sandy hair. "Olivia Blackburn, I love you more than I ever thought possible. Would you do me the great honor of becoming my wife?" "Yes," she said without hesitation, her heart too full for eloquence. As he slipped the ring onto her finger, Owen looked up at her with such tenderness that Olivia felt her final defenses crumble. "You know," he said, rising to take her in his arms, "they say marriage is about supporting each other through life's trials." "Is that so?" She smiled through happy tears. "Indeed." His lips brushed her forehead. "You hold me upright just as surely as I hold you." They were married on New Year's Day, 1886, in the small church in Copper Creek. Martha had created a wedding dress that transformed Olivia's uniquely curved silhouette into something ethereally beautiful, with cascading fabric that flowed like water over her back. The church was full not just with the expected ranching families and business owners, but with townspeople who had once crossed the street to avoid Olivia. Mrs. Grayson had seen to that, making it clear that attendance was expected from anyone who wished to remain in her good graces. But as Olivia walked down the aisle toward Owen, his face alight with love and pride, she hardly noticed who was watching. The years of pain and isolation seemed to fall away with each step toward her future. Their vows were simple but heartfelt. When Owen promised to love and cherish her in sickness and in health, his voice carried a depth of understanding that brought tears to many eyes. "You may kiss the bride," the minister announced, and Owen gathered Olivia into his arms with tender reverence. "My beautiful wife," he whispered against her lips. The celebration afterward was the most joyous Copper Creek had seen in years. Even Tom Wilson approached the couple, hat in hand, to offer awkward but genuine congratulations. As evening fell and lanterns were lit in the town hall, Owen led Olivia onto the dance floor. Unlike at the Graysons' gathering months before, this time she moved with confidence, secure in his arms and in their love. "Are you happy, Mrs. Donovan?" he asked, his breath warm against her ear. "More than I ever dreamed possible," she replied, her hand tightening on his shoulder. "Good," he said simply, "because this is just the beginning." And so it was. In the spring, They moved into a small ranch Owen purchased with his savings close enough to town for Olivia to continue her work at the millinery, but far enough away to give them peace and privacy. They named it Upright Ranch, a private joke between them that became their personal motto. Over the years, Copper Creek grew and changed. The railroad brought new people and opportunities. Olivia's hat designs gained fame beyond the territory, and Owen's skill with horses made their ranch a respected breeding operation. They had their share of hardships, a difficult first birth that left them with just one daughter, Rebecca, a drought that nearly ruined them in '89, Owen's old war wound that troubled him increasingly as he aged. But through it all, they faced life as they had promised side by side, each supporting the other. On their 25th anniversary, their now grown daughter organized a celebration at the ranch. Among the gifts was a painting commissioned from a traveling artist, Owen and Olivia standing together, his arm around her waist, her head on his shoulder, their bodies fitting together perfectly despite her curved spine. "Look," Rebecca said, unveiling the portrait. "He captured exactly what I always saw growing up, how perfectly you fit together." That night, after the guests had gone and Rebecca had retired to her room, Owen and Olivia stood on their porch, gazing up at the same stars that had witnessed their first declarations of love in that lined shack so many years before. "Did you ever regret it?" Olivia asked suddenly, voicing the question that occasionally still haunted her quietest moments. "Choosing a wife others pitied?" Owen turned to her, his face lined now with age and weather, but his blue eyes still clear and direct. "Olivia Donovan, in 25 years, I have regretted many things: horses I shouldn't have bought, deals I shouldn't have made." He drew her close, his hand finding its familiar place on her back. "But loving you, that has been the one true and perfect decision of my life." She rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady heartbeat that had been her anchor through a quarter-century of joy and trials. "You know," he said softly, "I meant what I said on our wedding day. This life, our love, it was just the beginning. And what comes next?" She asked, smiling up at him. "Everything," Owen promised, bending to kiss her. "Everything."